Hello. Yeah. In this talk, we'll be discussing about like how you can build more robust and type-safe application and elevate your routing game with TanStack Router. So, uh, as you already introduced me, my name is Prateek. I'm currently working as a software engineer at Fold. So yeah, like before we begin, let's understand like why do we even need a client-side router in the first place? Uh, don't like can't browsers already handle like navigation with link tags? Well, the answer is yes, but uh, client-side routers significantly improve the user experience and also the developer experience. So to understand that, let's first take a look at like how the basic default browser navigation works. So for example, whenever the user clicks on a link, the browser sends an HTTP request to the server for the new page. And as soon as the server processes the request, it sends the response with the new HTML page. And after that, like once the browser receives the response, the browser then has to unload the current page, discarding all the associated DOM, CSS OM, and or any associated resources like JavaScript, CSS, etc. And then the browser, paints and then paints the page, passes the HTML, paints the new page, and constructs a new HTML document from scratch, and also like fetches any JavaScript or CSS or any other images assets like that from scratch. Uh, so let's like Wikipedia would be a great example where like if you see every time you click on a link, there's a full page reload. I mean, it still feels pretty fast, but like as JavaScript evolved, we got like single page applications that take advantage of client-side routers that improve this user experience, that can improve this user experience even further. So let's see how client-side routers work. So basically, whenever you click on a link, like on an app that is using client-side routers, uh, instead of like doing the full page reload like we saw before, client-side routers intercept the navigation and prevent the default behavior of full page reload. And then uh, the router passes the current URL, and instead like it itself updates the UI and also updates the history stack accordingly so that the back and forward navigation work as expected. And then finally, if like the page might have some data fetching requirement which it can fetch via making any additional client-side network calls if needed. Uh, so again, this has allowed us to build web apps that not only need to reload with every subsequent navigation, they can also persist UI and state across navigations and make only the network requests that are actually needed. And overall, like we get a feel of a desktop app from today's web applications. Uh, and also client-side routers have come a long way now. Like they not only help with just basic navigation, they also have stuff like code split based on route. Like uh, they'll only fetch data for a particular route based on the route you're currently on. And they can also restore scroll position when you are moving back and forward between pages. And they can also like prefetch any assets when you are hovering over a link. So yeah, and modern frameworks like Next.js, Remix, etc. Integrate really powerful client-side routers that help you build really performant applications. Like Next.js and Remix, for example, like have like for the first page load, they render and stream the response from the server, and for the subsequent request, they use a client-side router, which then again only updates the part of the UI that is needed. And like if the JavaScript is not loaded, it can also fall back to the default navigation. So they have like really good routers. And you also have like standalone routers like React routers, etc. So which can be used if you're building static client-side applications. But in this talk, will be focusing on one of the routers in particular called the TanStack router. Uh, so the TanStack router is created by the creators of TanStack Query, formerly known as React Query. Uh, it not only has all the features that the modern frameworks have, but what makes it really stand out is its huge focus on TypeScript. So TypeScript is embedded in, like, every part of the router is fully type safe. So that's what makes it so special. And without any further ado, like, let's get into the demo. Okay, so I'll increase the font size. Okay, so here I have set up a basic dashboard app, which we'll be building for the rest of the talk to understand how the router works. So this is just a basic Vite app, and I'm using Tailwind CSS and ChatCN UI for the UI. So right now it's just in main.tsx, we just have added this div, that's it. So if I go to the, let's go to the next commit. So with this, okay. So with this commit, I have installed all the dependencies needed for the router, and I have also added the Vite plugin. The TanStack router has a Vite plugin, which I'll get to in a minute, like why is it needed. And we'll be using like file-based routing for this, which is the recommended way for navigating with TanStack router. And what I've done is, like, I've created a root component which just contains some UI, and we create root component via create root route, and like you can consider it like it's the top level root route and the only required route in this router. So you can consider it similar to what we say, like the root layout in Next.js or the equivalent root.tsx in Remix as well. So yeah, and also uh, uh, I will not be going too deep into how the file name convention for the routing works. So here is a screenshot from the documentation. So basically we use, for flat file-based routing, we use the path name as the, it uses the path name as the URL, and like you can use the dollar prefix for any dynamic params you have. Uh, yeah, so, okay. So let's go on to the next commit. Okay, so in this next commit, I have like updated the main.tsx file to use the router provider. So uh, router provider would basically take care of uh, rendering all our routes, and it's and we import it from TanStack React router, and we create it via the create router. One thing you'll notice is that it expects a route tree, which is like undefined right now. We don't have a route tree right now, and this is where the Vite plugin that I showed you earlier come into play. So if I run the dev server again, you'll see that it generates this file called routetree.gen.ts. So this is where like all your routes would, like, it contains the config and the whole tree for your route. And let me just like import it. Yeah, so it basically would contain all the routes and the route tree for your app. And you'll also see this block. So this block is basically how you get the magical type safety across the across your app. So we register this router inside the TanStack module. So wherever you would import this module, you'll get all the types that are generated via here. Okay, so again, uh, uh, so if I run this again, so yeah, like this root.tsx that we saw earlier is visible now. And let's create the index route. Uh, So what you'll see is that it immediately, like that the router plugin automatically adds an export for the route inside the file. But, uh, and like this component property is where we define our component. That's how we added it in the root route as well. Uh, but what you will notice is that it also has this path which specifies like which route this file is currently rendering. Now you might ask like, can't it just figure out from the file name itself? Well, yes, it can, but like the thing is like without this path, TypeScript would have no idea which file you are in. So this is a bit redundant, but this is required. And anyways, like the Vite plugin takes care of updating it for you. So even if you update it to something random and save the file, it would automatically change it to the correct path again. Okay, so now I think like we are not still seeing the hello that we added here. That is because like we haven't told the root route like where to render this. So basically, I'll add like I have to tell the root route like where to render the child routes. So I'll use the outlet component. You can consider it similar to the children blob that we use in layout in Next.js, or similar the outlet component in Remix as well. And now, yeah, like it renders this. Okay, so yeah, like let's move on to the next commit. If we go to the next commit, I'll go to this. So with this commit, I have added some static UI for the dashboard, and I've also created another page called the sales page. Again, this is completely static. I've created a similar sales.tsx route. So again, like let's start by adding the links for navigating between these pages in this route. So I've already added this comment for a link component, and I'll just uncomment this. And this is where you see the first glimpses of type safety of this router. So as soon as I add toProp, you'll see the TypeScript autocomplete like giving you the suggestions of what paths are available here. So as you can see, like we have only added the slash path and slash sales path. And you can also do relative navigation. So you can go to the sibling route or go back via the link tag. So I'll add the slash page. And I'll also do one more thing is I'll add active props. And I'll add maybe a class name of So this would be applied when the link is active. So if I save this, yeah, you'll see the dashboard link appearing here. And when it's active, it will show the active link. And similarly, like I'll create another component, like I'll create another thing for the sales tab. And yeah, we have the router working. And again, like it's completely type safe. If I type something random, it would throw an error and your code won't compile. So yeah, that's it about the routes. Now, again, let's see how it handles data fetching next. So I'll go to this. So again, I haven't made any changes yet. So I'll go to the the index.tsx route. And the way that TanStack Router handles data fetching is via the loader prop. So all I need to do is just add a loader, and I've already created a function that makes an API call and returns a promise with the dashboard stats. So you'll see like it returns promise of dashboard stats, and I can just directly use the data using route.use loader data. And then, then I can just like update these static values to use the dynamic, the data we get from the API. So I'll just quickly update these. So again, like I get full type safety here as well. And yeah, like now if you see this, all of this data gets loaded from the API. So again, the React router, the TanStack router uses render as you fetch pattern. So with render as you fetch pattern, you don't wait for your component to render, then start fetching the data. You start the fetching before, and then it uses suspense to like suspend the component while the data is being fetched, and then renders the component. So it's pretty fast. And then, like what if now we wanted to add a pending state while the component is loading? So I'll add a pending component. You can do that via the pending component. And I have already created a pending component. So what this was do is like this pending component would be used as a suspense fallback while the data is being loaded. So right now, if you see, you won't see the spinner yet because by default, like TanStack Router avoids showing the spinner unless the data takes more than 1 second to load, which is again, like you can configure that. But that is done to avoid any weird layout shift. So like let's just increase the delay. So I have the API code here, and I'll like increase the delay to maybe 800 milliseconds. And now if I reload, yeah, you'll see the loader that we just added. Like that's all we had to do, and it takes care of everything else. No if-else conditions for rendering the loader, etc. And the last thing I would also like to show is like you'll see this TanStack Router logo at the bottom. So what I've done here is like I've added like TanStack Router also comes with its own dedicated dev tools similar to React Query. So again, like this lets you visualize all of your route state, and you can see all the available routes and the currently matched routes. And you'll also be able to see like the cached matches. So again, since this was created by the creators of TanStack Router, it also borrows from the TanStack queries. It also borrows some of the stale while revalidate caching that React Query has. So by default, whenever you fetch data, the TanStack Router caches the data. And then by default, the stale time is 0. So what that means is like whenever you go back to the dashboard page, it would show you the stale data and then fetch the data in the background. So yeah, and this like actively shows you the current age, the stale time, which is 0 second by default, and last is the GC time, which is the garbage collection time. So if within 30 minutes the data is not being used, it would just garbage collect it. And yeah, so let's see that. So since it is cached, there's no loading spinner. Let me show you the network tab. So it shows you the stale data while it makes the request for the data and then like updates the page if there's any new data. So you don't have to worry about like showing stale data to users. Yeah, and this stale time again can be modified like at a global level or at per route level. So I'll add a stale time of let's say 10 seconds. So now if I reload the page and if I go back to sale, yeah, so it won't like fetch immediately. So if like I'm on sales page and I go back to like the dashboard page after 10 seconds, so yeah, so it would make the request after those 10 seconds because the data is considered stale. Yeah, so that's mainly about how data fetching works. Like there's a lot more other things as well. So let's see those as well. Again, I'll go to the next commit. So with this commit, what I have done is like I've integrated the API in the sales page as well. So this is being fetched from the API as well using another invoices/all. And if I go to the sales page, it's like very similar to what we did for the dashboard tab. Now you'll also see like I've also added one more page which is supposed to show the invoices you click here. So if I go to sales/2, so it shows me the second page. But currently the link tags here, these are supposed to be link tags, they are not working. So let's start by integrating them. So what I'll do is I'll add, you get like immediate autocomplete, like this is the sales/invoice ID page. And now since like, again, this throws error because you need to add params, like you need to tell what the invoice ID is. So you have to add the invoice ID. And again, you get full type safety here as well. So I'll add the invoice ID. And yeah. Yeah, so this works now. So again, and one more thing is that like since all of this, like all of the routes are fetched in parallel, so what you will see is that straight like there are no waterfalls. Like both of the routes are fetched in parallel and are then rendered immediately as soon using suspense. Okay, so like again we'll also add this so that we get which route is currently active right now. And I'll also add like maybe we can like improve this performance even further. So I'll add preload intent. So what this would do is like it would automatically preload the relevant data for the route as soon as I hover on it. So for example, let me reload to clear the cache. So if I hover over this, you'll see it already preloads it, and then it opens this page immediately without any loading state. So that works because like it preloads the data, and by default, like similar to stale time, you also have preload stale time, which is 30 seconds by default, and again configurable. And the preload, you also have the preload delay, which is like how long should a user hover over a link before it starts getting like preloaded. So yeah, like again, this significantly improves the UX. So maybe we don't want like 50 millisecond delay. Maybe we want to increase the delay. So again, it's pretty straightforward. I'll make this 500. So the preload. So now like instead of immediately loading, I'll have to hover on it for a bit to for the request to be made. Yeah, and lastly, one last thing I would like to show with data fetching is request cancellation. So I'll go to the invoice ID route. So basically, TanStack Router also supports like automatic request cancellation via bot controller API. So in the loader, you get a bot controller. And also I forgot to mention this, but like you also get the param. So since we are on the invoice ID page, we get the invoice ID param. So again, it's completely type safe as well here. So yeah, like, and I've already added this abort controller to my Axios. So I'll just pass this abort controller here. And then what you'll see is that if I like quickly fetch between links, so the router automatically cancels the requests that are not needed anymore. Okay, okay, so now coming to my last and the most favorite part of this router, which is like its huge focus on like type safety with search params. So TanStack Router like already takes care of like search param validation, serialization, and deserialization for you. So if I run this, like I've already written the code for this. So what you will see in the sales page, all I've done is like I'm using Zod to specify the search param object. So these are the search params that I want my page to have. And again, like I get complete type safety for search params as well. So I've defined these via Zod enum. So like filters is an array of an enum, and like sort would be an enum, and search is just a string. So yeah, like you get, and you just need to pass this to validate search, and then that's it. Like you get complete type safety for these search params across your router while updating and getting them. So you use them via router.useSearch. So as you can see, you get these here. And then what I've also done is like since our invoices would be like the data we fetch would be dependent on this. So I've also added like the TanStack router also has this thing called loader dependencies. So this tells the router that hey, these are the search params that this route is dependent on. So whenever they change, you need to fetch the data again and then re-render the component with the new data. And again, like whatever the dependencies you specify here is what you get here, and you can pass it to your invoices. So if I remove sort, you'll see sort is no longer here. Okay, so yeah, and you'll also see like it adds the default values for search params. So also one more thing is like I'm using catch instead of default for Zod. That's because we don't want our app to break if a search param is invalid. For example, what if this was like this? So like TanStack Router will automatically take care of correcting it based on whatever value you have provided in catch. And based on that, so yeah, that's basically all I've done is that I have updated, I am using the search params and updating them. That's all I'm doing. All the data fetching is being taken care of by the router. So basically, if I apply a filter, it automatically works. Like whenever the URL change, whenever the search params change, the router knows, and it automatically adds it to the cache as well. So you'll see like all of these with the filters are added to the cache. And yeah, and again, like as like I think TanStack Router, like they recommend using this approach because it's like the OG state manager. So instead of doing the data fetching manually using useState. By managing the filters manually using useState, we use the query search params, because this has many benefits. Like I can command click on a link and it would have the same things applied, and I can share this link with anyone and they would see the same state. And yeah, so, and I can also do search, so it immediately updates the URL as well, and like I can also reload and the state never goes away. So yeah, like that's the main part. And also it also does all the serialization and deserialization for you, so you can have like really complex nested objects inside your search params, and TanStack Router will take care of serializing and deserializing those for you and give you complete type safety across your loaders and your route. Yeah, so that's mainly it about the demo. So coming back to the slide, and yeah, there were a lot of other features as well. Like, trust me when I say that we have barely scratched the surface of what this router can do. There are a lot of things like route masking. You can like render another route, render a route and then render another path on it. And it also has support for streaming SSR and data fetching with external libraries. So it integrates really well with React query or like TanStack query. And since we saw like it has the data fetching support, it doesn't have very good mutation support. So if you are mutating the data a lot, they recommend using external libraries like TanStack query. And you also have deferred data loading and many more things. You can check out their docs for more things. And they're also building this framework, this full stack framework, which they call TanStack Start, which uses TanStack Router underneath, and it has all the modern features like server functions, bundling and etc. are all integrated inside the framework, similar to how we see with Next.js and Remix. And yeah, so you can check them out at tanstack.com/start. So the question remains like, when should you actually use the TanStack router? And I think like Tanner Lensley, like the creator of the router, very well summarized in this tweet. Like right now, like modern frameworks like Next.js, Remix, and everyone is like optimized for load performance. So like they are optimized for like you ship as less JavaScript as possible, and your page loads as fast as possible, which is good. But like this, what TanStack Router and TanStack Start would be focusing on would not be like this, would not be like e-commerce things, but instead it would be for those who want to build like highly interactive and scalable client-first JavaScript applications. Thank you.